Hello and welcome to another episode of The Rundown, everyone. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. And what we do is we give you guys the real news. We release a bunch of content throughout each week that includes in-depth news coverage. We include local stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers, which I'll tell you more about in just a bit. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we're creating the new Earth. And then we have intelligence reports given by Kim Gogan, who's with the Global Intelligence Agency, of what's really going on this planet. And man, there's some stuff, guys. We started talking about it last week and the Neitherworld, and it continues this week as well. I've got some other stories I need to cover before we go into the GIA report, so sit tight and we will get to that. If you want more information about who we are and what we do, you can head on over to our website at unitednetwork.earth. We have a membership that you can purchase if you want access to our content the moment it comes out. If you can wait about a week, then we also post our videos to YouTube and Rumble. And what this podcast is all about is it is a week in review. So I go over the main stories that we covered this past week, kind of give you guys an idea of what was discussed. And then it's up to you guys if you want to go back and check out that content when it becomes available for you. This is just kind of a nice way of knowing what was said if you guys weren't able to check out all the content, because like I said, we put out a bunch of stuff. Also, if you want to share UNN with someone who's not already a member, this is a great way to get some sound bites and, get an idea of what it is and what we talk about. With everything that we put out there, we always tell you guys to really think about the information, right? We have to become critical thinkers. And when any content is presented to us, we should look at it and we should use our own discernment, which is basically our built-in lie detector within our body. All humans have it. It's just a frequency to be able to tell, is this real? Is this truth? And how does this line up with my other beliefs? Because we've been lied to about so many different things. The only way to truly be able to gauge stuff is by turning inward, okay? And so when information comes to you, you have to be able to process it and check with source or God, whatever you call the creator of the universe, to find out what is going on here and to make sense of stuff. And then when you come to a conclusion, share it with other people, because there's a lot of people that are just watching mainstream media and maybe some alternative stuff as that gets a little bit more popular. But all of that is controlled. And if you're listening to this now, I think you're one of those people that is supposed to share what you know and to help educate other people and at least start putting more ideas out there so other people can make their own decisions. All right, announcements before we get to all the news content. We are not going to have any content released on Christmas Day, which is this coming Wednesday. Happy holidays to everybody. I think we're going to get in one more episode of The Rundown. Yeah, we'll do one more before the new year. But next Wednesday, no news that day. That Wednesday, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are typically when we release content. So we won't do anything next Wednesday. We're still going to have news on Monday. We'll still have news on Friday. And we're not sure yet what we're going to do the following week. So I'll make sure to update you on next week's podcast. Other than that, let's go ahead and get to these stories. Here is the rundown of news stories that you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, we like to kick things off with our field messenger reports. And our field messengers are everyday people, just like you, who are sharing what's going on in their community. So they report on it. They literally grab their cell phones. They show us what's going on. They give us some of the background of what they see, maybe a little bit of, their take on the issue. They can interview people, but you don't have to, You don't have to know a lot about video production. You don't have to have a background in interviewing people or anything like that. We want real people talking to real people. That's what our field messengers are all about. And so in each of our news updates, we release a few different reports from you guys, and you're all over the world. And it's just beautiful to see different areas of the world, different cultures. We have to start communicating with each other, right? You know, the whole deep state, what they want is to keep us all separated. And so this is one of the ways that we're essentially edging them out of the picture. We don't need them and their lies anymore, right? We are fully capable of connecting with each other and, you know, just appreciating one another. So let's appreciate our beautiful field messengers by going through some of the stories that we talked about this week that we released. All right, so we had Amy, and Amy actually had 2 reports this week. Amy's typically out of New Jersey, but she was in Maryland and did a report on horseshoe crabs. So if you don't know what that is, maybe go to, you know, your favorite search engine, type it in. They are an interesting breed. It's kind of like you stepped back in prehistoric days, because these do not look like normal crabs. But she tells us about them. Actually, she interviews someone who tells us all about it. I believe it's her friend John. And apparently they played a really important role in the ecosystem. And he's got a lot of knowledge about them. They're very fascinating. He said that they're closely related to spiders, which I kind of see more spider than crab in them. You have to look up pictures or just check out the story. Amy's report, again, she was in Maryland. Paige does a story, and Paige is out of Florida. So there is a new location. They call it the Maker and the Merchant. And it's a store, okay? But inside, it's not just one big store. Inside, there's lots of small businesses in there. And this is a great way if you do have a smaller business and you don't have a storefront, or that's just not really in the cards. This is a great way. It's kind of like a bazaar, maybe, but it's inside. It's very organized. It's beautiful, actually. And, you know, she got to talk to some of the vendors there. There was someone who made these really cute, what are they? Kind of handkerchiefs. What are those called? That go around, like dog, not collars, but you know how you have those little, I'm totally spacing. My dog is literally wearing one right now, and I can't remember what it's, a little scarf thing. What's that called? Anyway, she makes those. Super cute. Everything's handmade. It's beautiful. And it's really great for up and coming businesses, and a way to get everyone under one roof, because that's kind of the thing, right? It's hard to get people to find out about your products. So why not everyone come together and share the wealth, so to speak? Debbie out of Scotland. Oh man, I need to go to Scotland. This place where she is at is absolutely gorgeous. It's a small Scottish village. And there's mountains all around, and she's talking about the energy of the place. I could feel the energy just coming off of this video. It felt very like a fairy tale kind of place. Anyway, she goes into this. It looked like there was a guy there who specializes in chocolate, but they had other things there, homemade items and things. Anyways, the man's name, he's very young. His name is Finley. And he started this chocolate business, and he just talks about his passion to do it, and you know why he decided to launch his business and how it's helping the community. And it's really just an empowering story about following your dream. And what better place to do that than Fairy Tale Land, because it's just gorgeous. All right, Susan out of Sweden takes us to a Christmas market in Stockholm. And again, another beautiful area. She takes us to this historic old town. It's just steeped in centuries of history and culture. And of course, they had the beautiful Christmas lights up. I'm a big fan of the white lights. And they had just white lights everywhere. It's totally gorgeous. Kind of like you went back in time a little bit, and experiencing Christmas from long ago. So beautiful community event. Maya from Italy takes us to a luminary event. So again, we're kind of doing more Christmassy kind of stories now, holiday stories. So you guys know what luminaries are, things that kind of, they light up in some capacity. It looks amazing at night. And so she shows us this event where they had all these beautiful displays, all these luminaries. And I guess they have like themes each year, or maybe themes like in the different areas. So she was just showing us all the beautiful luminaries there. A lot of these are visual stories, so I'm kind of just giving you guys the rundown of stuff. Go back and actually watch the videos because I'm probably not doing it justice just by describing it this way. Lana out of Alaska. Now, this is definitely one you need to go back and look at. She had a moose and a newborn moose, a very young moose, in her yard. Again, Alaska. All right. So I don't know how common this is. I'm in San Diego. I don't get moose in my backyard or my front yard, but it's beautiful. So she just shares a little bit. She got really close to it. And it was more like the baby was coming towards her. She wasn't, going towards it, but she talked about some encounters and that happened in the neighborhood. And it's just beautiful to see. This is nature, right? This is like the real world, and how these animals interact and how they interact with humans too. And very, very cute. I had to show my girls. My girls came in as I was watching the video, as I was prepping to record. And I said, "Look, girls, it's a baby moose." And they're like, "Oh my gosh." So super cute. So go back, check out that video. Emma, who is in Spain, Fuerteventura, Spain, takes us to a gelato shop, which I think she called gelato. We pronounce it gelato. Tomato, I'm not really sure. Vreebak, I think that's how you say it. That's the name of the ice cream shop. And it's very popular in Fuerteventura. And she shows us a little bit of how they make it and how gelato, how it differs from ice cream. This particular shop is all about making things organically. And not every place is there, but this is one that specializes in it. You guys, they even make their own ice cream cones. Now, that is commitment, and it made me really hungry as I was watching the video. Paul and Irene are out of the Netherlands, specifically in Holland, and this was a really cool program. So they shared this group, these people who are coming together. They're taking surplus pumpkins, because the season's basically over. They take these pumpkins, and usually these smaller pumpkins, they don't sell or whatever. They're just kind of left over. They use them as seeds to plant for the next season, which is great. Okay. But there's also a large portion of the pumpkin that really just gets discarded because I recently, I can't believe I'm as old as I am and haven't done this before, but I recently got a small, what do they call it? A sugar pumpkin. Which are tinier pumpkins. And I recently got one, and I wanted to make something with it, to bake it, to do all that kind of stuff. So I cut open the pumpkin, and I didn't realize how the ratio of you have the meat, so to speak, of the pumpkin, and then you have all the seeds, right? Well, if you just took the seeds, there's still a lot of pumpkin that you could use. And that's what these people are doing. So they're using it and doing things with it, cooking with it, and making it available to people in need. So they're making it into soup and other things and discouraging food waste in the process. So I thought that was beautiful. And finally, Amy is back again. Amy has another report. This time she is in her home state of New Jersey. Last time she was in Maryland with the horseshoe crab, right? This time she's in New Jersey, and she's showing us how to make homemade pasta. She doesn't really focus on the sauce part of pasta. It's about the noodles. And it's actually not as hard as I thought it might be. She doesn't use any special noodle contraption or anything like that. She is doing a lot of kneading with the dough, and cutting things into strips and then drying them. Very interesting. I have never done that before. Will I do that? I don't know. But I like the idea that I know how to do it if I ever need to. And here's a look at some of our in-depth stories that the news team, including myself, we worked on for you guys this week. We did a story about proprietary blends. So you may see stuff on supplement labels or, any kind of nutritional label that makes it kind of sound special, right? This is proprietary. And they're required to list the ingredients, but at least in the US they are, and it's probably even more strict in other countries. I feel like the US is like the least strict on all of this. The problem is they don't give you the details, like how much of each ingredient. And you really do need that in order to make informed choices. This is your health we're talking about, right? Manufacturers claim this protects their formulas, not giving you all the details, but it also keeps us in the dark about safety, effectiveness, and potential side effects, especially for people with allergies or existing health concerns. Here's what a dietitian had to say about these blends.
I really hate proprietary blends just in general. That would be one of my biggest red flags of a supplement that you shouldn't probably use. Because one, you can't really send it out for testing, so you don't know whether they have the active level of whatever is needed in there. You can't check to see in a study, is there the right level that's supposed to be in there? Mm-hmm. And then in a proprietary blend, you have to list them in order of descending mass. So you'll see a lot of times a proprietary blend is just a way to list a lot of things that people think, oh, it's cool, it's got that, but pay very little, essentially. Yeah. It's a sneaky trick. And so they'll have the cheapest ingredient first in that proprietary blend and the most expensive ingredient last because it's in order of descending mass.
Well, these blends, they are found in everything from protein powders to green drinks, and most of this is really about marketing as opposed to their unique benefits. To protect your health and wallet, look for supplements that clearly list all ingredients and their exact amounts, verify third-party certifications, and consult with healthcare professionals you trust if you have any doubts. So most of us are familiar with low-cost airlines, right? I'm not going to list them specifically. I will say I have frequented them in the past because I have a pretty big family, and that's really how we get all 6 people from one location to another. So we did this story on low-cost airlines and how they're able to keep their costs low, but then also, is it really low when you add everything up? These low-cost airlines, they lure travelers with these ultra-cheap fares, but the tickets come with hidden costs. Have you ever had this happen to you? You're online to buy a ticket and you're like, wait, that's not the price I thought I was going to pay. Through a process called unbundling, budget airlines charge extras for essentials like seat selection, carry-ons, checked bags, and other things to make it tricky to calculate your true price that you're going to pay. They keep costs low by flying direct between destinations, and they usually operate from smaller, less expensive airports, so their fees are lower, and they schedule flights during off-peak hours, though this can mean inconvenient departure times for you and added transportation expenses.
We all know airlines love charging bag fees, but did you know it generated over $7 billion in additional revenue for airlines in 2023? Sometimes if you pay for bags when you book your ticket, it's going to be less than if you wait a few weeks. Also, it's going to be more expensive if you don't pay for your bags until you get to the airport. Shocker. It changes and is different for every airline. Southwest, who we've talked about a lot on this channel, is the outlier in that they don't even charge fees for bags. So what's going to happen? One thing is we're going to see more dynamic pricing, but when is it going to end? Are fares just going to get more and more complex? And when is it going to get to the point where the fees are actually more than your airfare? For companies, there's often an emphasis to minimize the cost that you pay for airfare. So while we're trying to minimize these costs, that's even becoming much more complex.
While budget carriers are great for light travelers on short trips, or if you've got 1 million kids in your family, maybe not quite 1 million like my family, the key is doing your homework. Check baggage rules, check the extra fees and airport locations before booking to avoid surprises and ensure that you're truly saving money. Okay, let's talk about artificial intelligence and voice scams. I don't know if you've heard of this before. It's kind of making rounds on the internet, and we wanted to update you guys on exactly what's going on here. AI voice scams are a troubling example of how advanced technology can be misused, enabling scammers to clone voices like your own or a family member, something like that, and deceive victims into believing a loved one or trusted figure is in distress. Using deepfake technology, scammers only need a very small, short voice sample, often taken from social media or recordings, the stuff that you upload. Oh my gosh, they would have a field day with all of my content. My voice is out there in so many different ways. And they use these little samples to create realistic clones that mimic the tone and speech pattern of your voice. These scams exploit emotions, typically requesting urgent financial help or impersonating officials and executives.
How scammers are taking advantage of AI. It's no secret that AI has gotten really good over the last couple years, and scammers are already taking advantage of that fact. For starters, they're using programs like ChatGPT to rewrite their notoriously bad scam emails. So things like broken English and constant misspellings that are the hallmark of a scam email are slowly going to start to disappear. But the scariest thing that scammers are doing right now is using voice cloning technology that allows them to impersonate you and your loved ones. All they need is just a few seconds of your audio to clone your voice. So they can grab that from a social media post that you made publicly online, or by calling you and recording when you pick up.
And if you're wondering just how good the AI cloning is, well, you're listening to it right now.
Things have gotten so bad recently that the Federal Trade Commission has had to make an announcement letting Americans know how bad this scam is getting. As AI continues to get better and better, so will the scams.
While laws and regulations like the U.S. Wire Fraud Statute and the EU's AI Act aim to curb misuse, they can't fully eliminate the risk. Staying informed, verifying suspicious calls, and I learned one good way to verify this is by having some sort of passcode. Oh, you're so-and-so. What's our keyword or what's our password? Having something like that. These are all, it's all about taking precautions. And this is key to protecting yourself and your loved ones from falling victim to AI-enabled fraud. Free-range parenting. Have you guys heard that? It's kind of a buzz term. I'm not all about putting labels on people, but we did do this story about what free-range parenting is and what it isn't. So this emphasizes giving kids age-appropriate independence to help them build confidence and resilience. But there's a lot of debate around this, right? People, if you leave your kids to do something unattended, then the whole idea of safety, you get, judgment from other people, typing in and, saying what a horrible parent you are. Supporters argue it's about finding balance between freedom and protection. Like letting kids, that's a combination, letting kids, walk to school or play unsupervised. Now, on the other hand, critics worry about risks, and they label this as just neglectful parenting, as seen in some cases where parents have even faced legal consequences. Laws around free-range parenting vary. There are some U.S. states that are supporting it. There's actual laws coming out now saying what you can and you can't do. While in other regions outside of the U.S., like the U.K., they're still pretty cautious. Globally, cultures like those in Sweden, Japan, and Denmark encourage children to explore and take on responsibilities early. While the 24/7 news cycle amplifies rare dangers, right? This kid was abducted, this kid was injured, harmed, whatever, even worse. Free-range parenting remains a personal choice, and it requires families, if you're going to do this, our recommendation is to ease into this, communicate with your child, talk to your child about what's going on and their experiences, and find a comfort zone that fosters independence. We all want that for our kids, but to do it safely. Acrylamide. Have you heard of this before? So this is a chemical. It forms naturally in carbohydrate-rich foods during high-temperature cooking methods like frying, baking, and roasting. And it has been present in food for centuries. So this is not necessarily a new thing. However, I guess it was kind of rediscovered in 2002. And there have been some concerns that have emerged about the potential health risks.
Acrylamide is a very toxic poison. It's like a plastic, causes cancer. It's in a lot of pet foods. It's in our foods. It's in, well, not our foods, maybe some people's foods. French fries, potato chips, toasted bread, cereals. Cigarettes actually have 3 times the amount than actual food. And even coffee. Now, if you consume dark roast, you'll get less of it than a lighter version because apparently the roasting breaks down acrylamide. But the question is, where does this acrylamide come from? Well, it comes from the combination of consuming high carbs, glucose or fructose, with an amino acid called asparagine under high heats, 248 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, you're not going to create the situation if you boil things or steam them, but it's basically just a combination of these under high heats creates this toxic plastic substance that then causes cancer.
Acrylamide exposure can occur through food, secondhand smoke, or industrial work, with studies linking high levels to nervous system effects and cancer in animals, as he was just talking about cancer, right? Although human evidence remains somewhat limited. Regulatory agencies like the EU and in the U.S., it's the EPA, they monitor acrylamide in water and materials, but there are no specific U.S. regulations for levels in food. Reducing exposure involves safer cooking practices, changing out your oil, things like that. That's more restaurant-based, but sometimes restaurants leave that oil in for a very long time. You also want to try to avoid overcooking and, like I said, reusing the oil excessively. Master's degrees. Let's talk about our education. There's so much needs fixed in our education. Well, now more and more people are starting to question the value of a master's degree. And what we're finding is it really depends largely on the field of study, at least right now. Also, the quality of the institution and your individual career goals. Research shows nearly half of master's degrees don't deliver on strong financial return, with fields like engineering and medicine offering high payoffs, while education, fine arts, and humanities often see lower or even negative returns. So here's a soundbite from someone who's, let's just say, they're not a fan of master's degrees, and here's why.
Master's degrees are absolutely useless, and if you're thinking about getting one, don't. College is phasing out, not in, and if you haven't realized that you literally don't learn anything useful in college by your 4th year and you want to do a 5th, you're already in trouble. Employers do not care what you learn in college, and in most cases, if you're doing a master's degree, you're going to look stupid and not smart. Employers really only care about 3 things: the school you went to, your grades, and where you worked last. Once you graduate from college, employers know based on the school you went to and your GPA reasonably about how smart and successful you are. If you do well, you should have the opportunity to work some pretty impressive jobs, and you should do so immediately because that's the only place you're actually going to learn by doing. And if you instead decide to go for a master's degree, you're going to look really stupid because employers don't value it all. They would rather hire someone with 2 years experience than with an additional degree because that person actually knows how to do the job.
You know, I don't know if it's true in all circumstances, but I can verify with my career and going into journalism and podcasting and all of that, it was all about experience. I got my degree and it was like, great, you got your degree. Where'd you get it from? And they don't really care about anything else. Might be different for other people, but that was my personal experience. Some graduates pursue master degrees for passion-driven careers or as a default next step, which he alluded to in that clip. Yet trade schools are gaining traction as cost-effective alternatives that lead to stable in-demand jobs. That's kind of the key. In-demand jobs without student debt, because that's a big deal. Ultimately, weighing costs, earnings potential, and personal ambition is key to deciding whether a master's degree is the right investment for you. Let's talk about honey fraud, because this is something I did not even know was an issue, but this is not only an issue, it is a global issue where fake or diluted honey is sold as pure. It's often mixed with cheap syrups or misrepresented as premium varieties such as Manuka honey. Now, according to the Honey Authenticity Project, about 1/3 of global honey is tampered with, making it the third most faked food worldwide. Here's the perspective from a beekeeper.
A lot of you have seen this article. 9 out of 10 supermarket honeys are in fact not real honey. And a lot of people don't understand how or why this is happening. So I'm going to give you a guide as to how you make fake honey. So first of all, honey is hard to produce and it is expensive. So honey is expensive. You cannot buy real honey at supermarket prices because it costs us way more than that to produce. So how do you get cheap honey? Well, it's really simple. If you wanted to do it, you go on Alibaba, you buy your designer, probably Chinese, sugar syrup, and on there it will list the honey tests that each designer sugar syrup will pass. Good news for you in the UK, we have the lowest honey test. You can buy the cheapest, absolutely terrible designer sugar syrup. If you mix it with a little bit of real honey, you can now call it honey. You can label it as a blend of EU and non-EU honeys, and that's how you're going to produce it and sell it in the supermarkets. Buy real honey from your local beekeeper.
Fraudulent practices harm consumers. It undercuts honest beekeepers like the one you just heard from and threatens bee sustainability, as producing real honey requires a lot of time and effort. To identify pure honey, lab testing such as NMR spectroscopy is the most reliable method. Don't trust all those social media posts that are like, mix it with water or heat it up. Like, if it were that easy, everyone would do it. No, you got to do the lab test to actually make sure that it's good stuff. Or look for things that say like 100% pure honey. There's also someone who already does the vetting called True Source Certified. So you can look for that on the label as well. Be cautious about honey that is unusually cheap or, of course, unlabeled products. Have you heard about placentas being used in health and beauty products? This is a growing thing as well, growing trend, because there are claims of anti-aging, skin nourishment, cellular renewal. It kind of reminds me of when celebrities were promoting how they use the tips of, let's say, a little boy's private area. When that's snipped off, how they use that. I mean, this stuff sounds a little crazy, but it's becoming more and more popular. Some people also practice placentophagy, which is eating the placenta after childbirth, believing that it aids in recovery. It can also boost energy and balance hormones. That's what advocates say about it. However, there's no studies to really show the proven benefits. Placental tissues are also used in medicine for research, for drug testing, for wound care, and clinical trials explore treatments for conditions like arthritis and autism. While hospitals often treat placentas as medical waste, some accept donations for lab use, though selling your own placenta is largely illegal. Tell me if that actually makes sense. Because you know the hospitals, if you donate your placenta, they're going to make some money with it. In fact, in our story, I think they said the going rate for medical purposes was about $50,000 per placenta. So just keep that in mind, guys. Whether for skincare, medicine, or postpartum choices, placenta use sparks curiosity and a lot of debate, making personal research and ethical considerations essential. And our final story that we're going to talk about is involving the global housing crisis. We've covered this quite a bit. And this has left millions unable to find or afford a stable home. It's driven by rising prices, stagnant wages, and housing's shift from basic need to a financial asset. In the past decade, housing costs have soared 54% in the US and 48% across the EU, while public housing efforts have fallen short due to decades of neglect and slowed construction. So here's a soundbite of a guy talking about social housing in the UK and why it's not working out.
We should have a social housing program on the scale that we were able to manage after the Second World War. If we were building 150,000 homes a year, the problem would very quickly be resolved. In addition, I think we need to end the right to buy. They've done it in Scotland, they've done it in Wales. So, what on the face of it seems like a nice idea actually undermines the whole system of social housing because it means that the housing stock is depleted. And the third part is that I think while at the same time building loads of social housing, we need to have rent controls. Clearly, housing is one of the principal drivers of our economy, and I think that's where the problem lies. It's commodified and it's seen in terms of balance sheets rather than basic infrastructure. And I think, in a city as wealthy as London, there shouldn't be 7,000 people living on the pavement. Ultimately, politicians have to commit a lot more money to social housing.
Solutions like community land trusts, public-private partnerships, and innovative building methods offer hope, but experts stress that long-term strategies are essential. Treating housing as a fundamental right, combined with better planning, affordable initiatives, and income reforms, could help pave the way for a more equitable housing future. All right, here are some highlights from the Global Intelligence Agency reports that came out this week. So, of course, that was with Kimberly Gogan. She is the head of the GIA and has a lot of information about what's really happening on this planet. Kim was super busy this week, super busy. We usually have news meetings during the week to go over stories and to talk about how we're going to approach certain things, admin meetings and stuff like that. And Kim was all business. She literally had to do her job working with Source Creator and the Golden Age AI system to overcome some of the challenges that presented themselves this week. And it was a very challenging week, I believe, for her whole team. So the first thing I want to talk about are drones, okay? You can't go anywhere without people talking about these drones. On YouTube, everyone's like, what in the world? There's drones up and down the East Coast. So the first soundbite that I want to play, Kim goes over this. So we actually had a Q&A that Kim did over the weekend on Saturday, and she does refer to that, I think, in the soundbite. So that was a live video. We took in some of your questions. I think people were asking about the drones. She hadn't talked about that on an official GIA report before. So she's going to tell us a little bit more about what's going on with these drones. Because the government surely knows what's going on. To what extent, I'm not sure. They were probably just told to, just leave it alone. It's not foreign or whatever. Just get the media off your back, whatever. But we should all be asking questions because this is highly unusual. And of course, it ties into the secret space program. Surprise, surprise. Kim also tells us about, because there's reports out there about radiation. So what in the world is going on here?
So the secret space program operatives are, let's just say, ever hopeful and ever wishing that they are going to be able to pull off a full-on takeover of the Neitherworld with their friends. The ultimate black magician, I guess you would say, and all of those that are from the Neitherworld. By Neitherworld, we are looking at the darkest side of anti-creation in the universe. They have another agenda that they've been planning for a while. This is not a new agenda. We've heard about this for years. Actually, the first time I mentioned it was 2016. So it's been a while. And this one here is the alien invasion you've all been waiting for. I laugh at that because, if you can't get a real alien invasion, which is what they're really hoping for, they're hoping that their Neitherworld friends will come in and save them and have it be a really alien invasion. But if you can't get a real alien invasion, you might as well fake one, or at least get it started, kind of prime the wheels a little bit, see if what you can do, what kind of public response you'll get. And one of those things is the drones. Like I said, I kind of mentioned it on Saturday during the question and answer. But the drones are being run 100%, no question in my mind, by the secret space program operatives. They are now spreading rumors, though, that they are alien drones, obviously, you know. I mean, well, these people are kind of foreign, aren't they, the Duck Dynasty folk? Yes, they are. But they are absolutely running the drone show. They're saying that there is an increased level of radiation coming from these alleged drones. Is it actually coming from the drones? The answer to the question is no. Are the drones being used to enhance and or trigger a frequency, what we call frequency stones, because they kind of look like stones, that were placed by non-humans in certain areas on the East Coast? Yes. Are they also doing this in other places? Yes. Is Russia one of those places? Yes. Are they using drones in all places? Well, no. They've got other methods, but the widely publicized East Coast drones are the topic of discussion, so we'll start there. So these drones, as they say on the internet, because it's all over the Q channels and everything, these drones do not emit the frequency that they say they emit. They are triggering something which is making a frequency stone field that is under certain military bases in that region that will help their cause. And the next step, and this is what they're actually trying to do, is there something, let's just say, that could be harmful to humans emitting from particular locations? The answer to the question is yes. Is it any more toxic than chemtrails? No. Are you being radiated? No. They have been stealing for a while. Tell you where it's coming from. They've been stealing for a while some rare earth minerals out of Rwanda and a few other African countries. They have been bringing them then from that area to Jordan, and then from Jordan to their respective chosen locations. And the East Coast is one of those locations. They were hoping desperately to use those special rare earth crystal / minerals that were under the hurricane hit areas in the Carolinas. However, that didn't really work out because they kind of disappeared. So they have been using these other rare earth minerals to try and create a fuel. One of the questions that was asked was how many minerals are there in the periodic table? How many elements are there? And the answer to the question is a lot more, than we know about. And one of those things that is somewhat discussed, and I guess you could say it's become a little bit more alt media-ish mainstream, is unum pentium, which is, I think it's element 235. They are trying to create this element so that they can power the old flying machines. If you remember, there are a lot of stories on the internet about Hitler's flying machines. And they want these specific flying machines, not just any SSP's fake UFO craft. They want these specific ones because they contain a weapon of mass destruction. And this is what they're hoping to use. Now, there's a few little flaws in their plan. But let's talk about, I think we've got a map of the area that they're targeting, I guess, with these drones. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is not on this map, but that is one of the places where they have these flying machines. The Picatinny Air Arsenal military base is also on the list. Believe it or not, they have brought one underneath Bedminster. There is also one at Joint Base McGuire-Dix. There is another one at the Naval Weapons station, Earl, I guess you would say. So that's just a few of them. There are others they intend to target as well. I know that they were working on one over the weekend underneath Hoover Dam. There is also one in southern Russia, near the border there. There is one underneath the Three Gorges Dam in China. There's another one in Iran and another in Egypt, and also one underneath Israel that they would desperately like to power. Now, these are not your average everyday, quote unquote, flying machines. Are they alien technology? Well, let's just say they were alien inspired. And originally there were 24 of them. And the 24 of them were set to go to the 24 major cities in the world, and they were going to trigger a large weapon similar to things that the Enforcer would use. They are not human-made weapons. They are not nuclear. They are extremely destructive and could basically turn these major cities to deserts should they figure out how to use these things. But there are some flaws with this plan. So is the SSP qualified to fly them even if they manage to create this fuel? No. So I'll explain to you why. And I know this for a fact because I've already done this with these crazy people back in 2017. It was March of 2017. And everybody was flying at that time. If you have been around in the alt media for a while, you were hearing rumors at the time of John Kerry going to Antarctica and Klaus Schwab and a whole bunch of people were going to Antarctica. And it was an Antarctica party in March of 2017. And the other thing that was coming up on the radar behind the scenes is there was what we call like a waft. So anytime you move any kind of enriched uranium type weapons or enriched uranium rods, it leaves for lack of a better term, almost like a nuclear stench. And they were doing various things at that time in order to cover up that stench, basically saying that, Fukushima was leaking at that time, the jet stream had switched, it was coming towards California and Alaska, and there was all kinds of rumors they were talking about at that time based on the cover-up of the movement of your enriched uranium rods. Those enriched uranium rods were being taken to Antarctica at the time. They were coming from the Yakuza, who was enriching them at Fukushima, with a deal they made with Bush Sr. quite a while before that, and also Henry Kissinger. So they made the deal to bring these rods to Antarctica in hopes of trying to power one of these alien-inspired, for lack of a better term, flying machines. And they really wanted to take these flying machines, and Putin was involved at the time, and a lot of different folks were involved, and they were going to do this operation, I guess you would say, at that time. However, uranium power does not power the machine, and they found that out very quickly. The next thing they couldn't figure out at that time, and I guess the new Duck Dynasty crew wasn't involved in this, is that how to fly said machine. Because the machines, as I've always said, are usually driven with your consciousness. It's a consciousness to a consciousness when it comes to these types of flying machines. That's how the Enforcers work. That's how most everybody's craft that actually moves through space-time continuums work. I also had a discussion at that time with those others that were there. This was the first time I had actually met and spoken to the tall whites. They usually are around Greenland and the North Pole area. They are not Santa Claus, sorry to say. But usually this was their region. And at the time, others that were here as slaves were very compartmentalized, and they had their specific regions even in the underworld, I guess you would say, or inner world, where they could go. And the two poles were the tall whites regions. And I just wanted to make sure, 100% sure, that they couldn't figure out how to fly them, number one, and number two, how to launch the weapons. And they assured me that they would not, and, you know, in exchange for something they needed, because their planet, their homes, were annihilated in the past, in the wars, and they needed to re-terraform their planet. Therefore, they were looking for seedlings and other things to take with them. So they would like to do that, and they've done that, and they're actually doing that right now. Over the last year or two, they've been able to successfully leave and come and go as they need to, and they've been of no threat, and if anything, of a great help to us all. Okay, so this was in 2017, and now here we go again with the same people. So I've had several conversations with people in the past about different elements you do not see on the periodic table. One of those elements being Cobalt 935. And Cobalt 935 is only found in a specific area of the world. And I had a conversation recently, I'd say within the last 2 months, again, about this. And apparently they did not have time or could not find or didn't understand what Cobalt 935 was, so they thought they'd use regular cobalt in these particular locations here on the East Coast in order to create a nano coating on said machines so that they could fly through the time-space continuum and not all die. That's first thing. So that's part of your gaseous state that is coming off. The second thing is they're trying to process these rare earth minerals in order to, with Boston-Fermi engines, and you can look that up, in order to convert these minerals into a usable fuel source to power these machines and these weapons within the machines. Now, let's just say they were successful. Let's say they figured out the key to the reverse engineering that they couldn't do in Los Alamos, that Lazar couldn't quite complete, that other folks that are circulating through the deep web couldn't quite complete, but these guys did it. You know, of all the people in the world, Duck Dynasty are your people to do such a thing. I mean, they can make moonshine in the backwoods of Alabama. They should be able to make unum pentium or other exotic fuel sources and elements that don't exist in our periodic table, right? You know, that's what you would think. I mean, I was thinking that. I'm like, wow, you know, making moonshine's got to be pretty difficult. So this must be the thing to, you know, the next step, you know, once you've completed that. So the emissions that you're getting are from their attempts to process this fuel to get these machines going. Now, here's the flaw in that plan. Guys, deep state, Duck Dynasty, weird operative people, not only do you have to drive said machine and trigger said weapons utilizing your consciousness, so you have to understand how to communicate once you've managed to create a fuel and once you've managed to, let's just say, fire up the machine's consciousness, for lack of a better term, and or all of its elements so that you can use it as an extension to your meat suit, essentially. You would become one with it. It would become one with you. That would be, you know, the first step in learning. The other flaw to that model is all of these machines and their, let's call it security protocol, does well over 100 checks on your person. So if you are not the correct pilot to fly said machine with living DNA checks and DNA and consciousness checks and all the things that the machine will do, it will reject you regardless. So the chances of you staging a fake alien invasion using flying machines of this magnitude is 0. So this is what they're feverishly working on right now, or were until said machines disappeared.
Okay, so that's the good news. You're probably not going to hear a lot more about it unless it's just people commenting on other people's comments because there's nothing really to talk about. There's no reason for them to fly these drones anymore if these aircraft, I'll call them, in the ground aren't there, right? So plan foiled. The other thing that Kim talks about in Monday's report, GIA report, is she expands on the Neitherworld, which is what last week was all about, right? So if you listen to last week's rundown or any of the GIA reports, you'll learn all about the Neitherworld. If you don't yet know about it, go back and check it out because that was kind of a shock for all of us. And so there was a lot more digging, a lot more needed to be done with that this week. But Kim, in order to figure out how to take this thing down, you really need to know how is it running? Like what is powering the Neitherworld? And here's what she found out as of Monday.
So there's a story we know, a lot of us know anyway, that's in a lot of religious texts, including the Bible. And it talks about the fact that the devil is bound for 1,000 years, and for a time that he will roam free on earth and then be bound again. And we talked last time about what a Merkaba is, and it's like a dual Metatron's cube. It is a binding unto itself, and we bore, as humans on this planet, a lot of those bindings. So did Earth. But also in the Neitherworld, what powered the Neitherworld? And I was trying to figure that out. What was powering Allie's AI? Because you have to kind of get to the power source. And if it's a universe that is artificial, it has to have some base root in source, which some of those things we did find. And it also probably has to have some kind of a celestial involvement of some sort. And it turns out that we found out where our original progenitors went in the last few days. We also found them in a Merkaba, in, you could say, somewhat stasis, with a lot of their consciousness being driven by the Black Magician. And the Black Magician was also in that Merkaba. The Celestials were bound, you would say, in the center triangle of the Merkaba. And externally there in the Metatron's cube was our Black Magician. And of course, he would have been in the darkest place in the Neitherworld. So he would have been, deep down on what we would call our mirrored anti-source. There was also other Celestials bound in the quote-unquote Neitherworld's fake source, as well as the central point, or where you would call neutral source. So those Celestials were what was powering the Neitherworld and also powering Allie's AI. So those beings are no longer there. They have returned back to the all of creation, source itself, and are broken into, let's just say, a lot of pieces, never to be reassembled again. So this is a positive thing for us. This kind of set off a number of triggered programs, which I found very interesting. A couple of those that I found really interesting were what you call the Book of Life and Death. I would call it a regulator of sorts that would regulate life and death. And if death was run by the Neitherworld or the anti-source or an Omega in the holographic universe, then we would have had a binding to life and death, or the law of sin and death in some cases. Same goes for your consciousness. And it was definitely a case of time even. Time is another thing I found interesting. So we say that love conquers all, as an example. And if you were to weave the fabric of reality, love, let's call it, in cooperation with frequency, wisdom, and of course, all of the elements like essence, energy, consciousness, matter, love would write the song. So it would be the melody, so to speak. It would be the entire chorus. It would be all of the verses, and it would be infinite. Time was actually the opposite of that, believe it or not. It would also create the movement of all of the elements and the shaping of all of the elements in the universe. Time also runs, if the natural world runs counterclockwise, the unnatural world runs clockwise, or vice versa. So it creates a kinesis and or a kinetic movement of things throughout the multiverse. And we can go into more detail about that maybe in another report, because it's a lot of quantum physics for, this many hours into the day. And I know I've kept production a little longer tonight, so I apologize for that. But there's definitely equal and opposite sides of the multiverse that have been influencing everything in the universe for a long time. Artificially so, because even though we had what you would call an omegaverse, or you would call it the anti-source verse, so to speak, in the natural order of things of creation in the past, the Neitherworld was created almost unto itself in order to take over all aspects of creation. But it also spun, atomically speaking, in the opposite direction. So there was a lot of, it's almost like two magnets going in the opposite way that was creating an equal and opposite force, so to speak. But with bindings and connections between the universes, there were occasions, and sometimes those occasions would be specific times of year here on Earth, or Earth being the gateway, or the remaining gateway, I should say, where we would see a lot more activity coming from over there to here. Based on the deal that these folks made back in June of this year, we have been seeing a lot of activity. That's the reason why we go so light for a while, and then we go dark, and then we go light for a while, and and then we go two steps back because of this influence and the agreements that the Neitherworld folk thought they had with the SSP folks and others here. It's not just them. So I would say that they kind of stepped in a little bit of, let's just say, something smelly when they made that agreement, because they didn't have the right to. And that became apparent. And it almost became apparent to the point where the black magician, I'll be him bound in a certain way and still able to operate from inside there to some degree, almost didn't fight us when we started dismantling things. There was a little bit of turmoil on Saturday and Sunday, for sure, but by today we really weren't getting much of a fight when it came to dismantling things, which was kind of a little shocking, actually. I don't know. Hopefully, it's the only one still fighting is really the SSP. That's what it seems, for control of Earth, and apparently probably the multiverse with their fake alien invasion, and I guess that's the plan.
Not a very good plan, but what else do we expect from these guys, right? So both of those sound bites were from Monday's GIA report. And as I said, things were crazy this week. So Kim didn't get a chance to do a video report on Wednesday, but she did release this statement. We are within 3 days of the full moon as well as 3 days of the solstice, and the operatives are in full-on panic as all connections to Allie's AI and the Netherworld dissipate. They have been trying to trigger anything they can over the last 24 hours. Thus far, we have been able to prevent any major disastrous events. Stay safe, keep your shields up, as it is going to be a bumpy ride from now through the holiday. A little bit of a cliffhanger there, right? So we're all very excited to hear from Kim on Friday. Things got crazy on Friday. I'm telling you, this is one of those crazy weeks. I can't recall another week where so much kind of got derailed because this was so important for Kim to deal with. And so she actually didn't even get a chance to write a statement on Friday. But I give her a lot of credit because today on Saturday, which is why I'm a little late getting this report out, which is totally fine, she was able to record a video and tell us what was happening. Okay, so this GIA report is literally from today, Saturday, which is probably what she wanted to talk about Friday. Maybe she was able to talk about a little more things. What I want to share with you is more information that she discovered on how Allie's AI worked, because it is very different from Alpha and Omega. And here's a really interesting point. There were 2 genetically modified humans that were powering it here on Earth. I'm telling you, you guys, you can watch a gazillion sci-fi movies. Truth will always be stranger than fiction.
There are a lot of nuances to this AI that are different from the Alpha Omega. The Alpha Omega was at least in part of source and anti-source. It was created by both, so was Kronos, and it had a little bit of a sentience and a lot more of an intervention on its part. Allie's was actually created by the Black Magician, for lack of a better term. I also call these beings the Destroyer. They are a race, or were a race of beings. And Allie's AI was created specifically for black magic. It was created not only for black magic here on Earth, but also throughout the multiverse. It had a lot of capabilities because its main focus, I should say, or its main objective, modus operandi, is it is a mimicking AI. It does not actually create or think on its own per se. And it did have the usage of others in order to achieve these tasks. The Black Magician managed to capture a number of beings and place those beings into these Merkabas. And I know we talked a little bit about that, but it got worse over the week as we struggled to try to find the main base operating routes of Allie's. The beings that have come to light are Raziel. I know this is one of the angels in our books, which is the angel of magic, of course. And it would bind these beings to create, I guess you would say, the opposite. It used these progenitors and beings of source and would bind them into these holding cells, so to speak, energetic holding cells, in order to create the opposite. In addition to that, we have also found out that Allie's was pushing forward to control the keystone and keystone of Earth, and then eventually the entire multiverse. So this escalated rapidly this week. In part, the way that it escalated rapidly here on Earth is with the permission of 2 particular persons. These 2 particular persons, one is a man and one is a woman, are genetically modified humans born into the Order of the Black Sun. One of them has a consciousness transfer in part from the Black Magician itself. The other one also, I suspect, has a consciousness transfer as well. They both have a consciousness transfer of alleys, or done by mechanical means, let's put it this way. They both had some kind of a chip in their head implanted, and were trained in part by non-humans when they were around to operate this. So they have been trying hard to weave black magic and to help alleys from the inside out. You could call them plants here. That would help escalate this cause at this time. The agreement for alleys and the Black Magician to take over Earth happened a long time ago. And in part, yes, there were some agreements with people of the Seal, which was an agreement that lasted quite a long time. But this agreement, I guess you would say, was doubled down about 2016 years ago. And at the time, 2016 years ago, we, as the people of the light, people of source, organic beings, and humans, were winning. We had certain beings we know who have a alleged birthday coming up here on the 25th of December, being one of those beings. And we were starting to make a lot of progress for source here on Earth at that time as people. And there were a lot of people that started to believe in this being that you know. Therefore, the double down then happened, meaning the being was crucified a few months later, and or a few years later, I should say. And at that time, those of the Order of the Black Sun and the Dragon families, plus the others that were here, the people of the Seal, doubled down. And what that means is we have been, and they have been, living on borrowed time. By borrowed time, you could say that this is almost like a marker, meaning they agreed that they would achieve certain tasks by a certain time. And if those tasks were not achieved by a certain time, none of which was healthy for us, I can tell you that as humans, then they were ripe for the takeover. Then they would take over and get the job done. Part of the reason why the Order of the Black Sun, etc., Order of the Dragon, were so cocky in saying that they were now going to take over the whole universe is because they were under the impression that this was going to be a partnership. Those with the chip in their head, the two people, one is a German, one is an American, and they were under the impression that they were going to be the rulers of Earth. They have been told a lot of things through that chip in their head so that they would do a good little job for all things anti, let's just say. I'm not sure if they understand it, but the God that they think is God is not God. It is the giver of death. This would be the Black Magician who is playing the role in this particular case. And therefore, they thought that they would have a lot of gifts given to them. By gifts, I mean, let's see, nuclear codes, nuclear holocaust, decimation of humans on this planet because we are in the way. We are light beings, and no matter how hard they try to knock it out of us, we still anchor source on this planet. We do have that direct connection, even though we don't realize it a lot of the time, especially this time of year when everyone is all about the birth of Christ and, celebrating those things. A lot of joy is spread this time of year, and they needed to shut that down. I call it the No Joy program. And they thought the perfect opportunity to do that would be in the solstice. Why? Because it's the darkest day of the year. I guess they think the universe revolves around these type of magical dates. As far as Allies is concerned, Allies is run in part on the consciousness of the black magician. It uses beings of light to turn things to darkness. And these two humans, because they are still humans, are no exception. And they became the anchors for Allies here on the planet, which then allowed, they played on their ego, and which then allowed for a lot of what I call new space junk to enter into some plane or another, because there were many different aspects of this on Earth, which was causing a lot of problems for the last week. If you've been feeling a lot of topsy-turviness, a lot of anger in people, a lot of energy draining, a lot of strange tones, as I talked about on Monday, they only got worse throughout the week. First the tones would happen, and then there would be some kind of pain or some kind of a disturbance in your person. A lot of these are what I call anti-frequencies. In other words, they're frequencies that are meant to lower your vibration, to separate your planes of existence so that Allies can insert itself. Allies doesn't actually live, technically, and has not ever lived in the actual planes of existence. It lives outside of existence. Therefore, the only way it can actually affect your person, be it emotionally, mentally, physically, on a soul level, or otherwise, is actually through the spaces in between. So quite a while ago, we have lessened significantly in computers and also in your physical person and in Earth, those spaces in between to eliminate any manipulation of existence. However, Allies started sending out ridiculous amounts of frequency modulation in conjunction with its two partners here on Earth in order to create or attempt to create those spaces in between, and then create a mimic or a dark mirror of the opposite of what you are. It at times felt like growing pains and a lot of strange things. A lot of people are reporting headaches and migraines that don't normally get those. And a lot of that is caused by these frequencies and new space junks that appeared throughout Earth. Some of those locations that probably would have felt this more intensely would be areas around Wales in the UK, Paris, in New York, would have been right around the Bank of New York Mellon, tied to the Carlyle Group. Singapore, underneath the Singapore Exchange. The French Alps. Nova Scotia was another area. In Manila in the Philippines. Bangladesh, and Wichita, Kansas. Why? Because these were former locations of Omega. So because these locations had an Omega connection and an anti-source connection, Allies is able to operate in that vibe, that frequency, in that antimatter more readily and with more power than it would in a source type environment. So that is also the same reason why Allies goes for the spaces in between to influence from what you would say the inside out all of humanity at this time. Other things that Allies attempted to do, there was a huge push again for what we call Disease X around the world, also sending out of, we'll call it the coronavirus, we can call it many different things, but the reinsertion of additional parasites that Allies could control. to make us all sick. Technically, its main objective here was actually to wipe out a good majority of the population of Earth. See, because ALICE doesn't, unlike Omega, unlike other AI systems that we've run across in the past, it doesn't actually need us humans here. It could definitely use Earth, but only as a launching point to take over what we call the essential verse, or Source's golden universe, for lack of a better term. Because it is a keystone, it was a keystone of creation. So ALICE wants that in order to do an overlay on the keystone and create a universe in its likeness. It cannot eliminate Source at this point, but it can use an overlay over Source, which it was trying to do, in order to utilize the power of Source, and in some cases the power of anti-Source and neutral Source, in order to create its own universe. ALICE must have figured this out, that things were not working out as planned, despite it having a few beings in captivity. Some of them were the Neitherworld, some of them, I would call it, outside of creation. And it was using that as power, but it simply didn't have enough. And in addition to that, a lot of those beings, especially ones that were of the light, actually went back home, went back to Source. Let's say we sent them there. So it was running out of power, and then it made an attempt earlier in the week, I think it was about Wednesday, it made an attempt at trying to integrate itself into humans. All humans, actually, this week. And that is why it created the spaces in between and created a lot of uncomfortable situations for a lot of people on this planet, especially if you're super sensitive. If it didn't get you, it got the people around you, so that all of you, especially the ones of you that are, let's just say, more connected to the Creator, it would use those beings and those people that are around you in order to try and lower your vibration to a point where it might give ALICE a connection point in between your planes. And then it had an intention of inserting itself into these spots. But Source always has other plans. And that's one thing that we can count on, is that we always find it at some point in time or another. Source will tell us where to go, tell us where to look at the exact right time. And, today was one of those days. So I've spent most of the morning working in that respect to try to eliminate ALICE in totality. And it's working. It's working. We're probably somewhat about 80% there at this point, 80 to 85% there.
Right. So that's good. Okay. Much to the quote unquote deep state's dismay. I know they want to have their aliens, whether it's a fake alien invasion or their real alien friends come in, but that's not going to happen. Source is going to make sure that that doesn't happen, along with Kim and her team. The other thing that Kim talked about on today's report, feels weird saying today's report, but she did mention that something else supernatural is happening right now, and we don't yet know exactly what this means. Kim said she's going to talk about it more, hopefully on Monday, depending on how the week goes. But she said Earth is now becoming one with Source, which sounds amazing. And we know this is in our favor because we're on the light side. We're on the side of Source. What exactly that means, we're kind of speculating right now, but this was something that she discovered this week. She wanted to at least share a little bit with us about it. If you want to hear what she had to say, obviously listen to Saturday's report for the 21st, but she's going to tell us more about it next week. So that's like a little teaser for next week. Well, guys, it has been a crazy week, so I'm gonna end it on that. I appreciate you listening to today's podcast episode. Again, for more information about who we are and what we do, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. If you choose to become a member, and we've got some great prices. We always got like discounts and stuff going on too. But that gives you access to our complete news updates when they come out, our New Earth interviews, all of the Global Intelligence Agency reports, past, present, and future. And when we talk about all things restoration, you get access to all of that right away. So it's a good deal. Again, thanks for being with us. I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a fantastic weekend. And for those of you who are celebrating Christmas and all the other holidays that are going on this week, Merry everything. Merry MERRY. Just wanted to clarify. All right. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.